I keep promising that I'm going to record the next time I do one of my Polar Lights 1350 Enterprise builds. So now I'm going to remember to do this. So my main workroom is here in the man cave. Kind of helps when you have your own place. So my garage is essentially just for doing all this work. You can see the Doomsday machine there that I made for my son, oh geez, 6-7 years ago, because he just loved that episode. So I made him one for his little Enterprise model. I'm going to do that again, get a larger tomato cage and make an even larger scale one for a larger scale Enterprise model. But here are all my kits. This is basically my Star Wars or Star Trek wall. Got some Star Wars kits in there too, but mainly Star Trek. And all of my work accessories. There's my Excalibur. I'm back from my 3 weeks down in LA, and I've got to figure out why the main lights aren't working in this, but all the other lights are. It's really frustrating, but I will get to that. My extra workbench here that I set up for my son because he said he is going to finish his Titanic model, and he's almost done, but he keeps getting on the computer and playing with computer games instead, so maybe he will, maybe he won't. My little spray area here. I don't have a hood or anything because all I do is just pop open the garage door and then I don't suffocate. Here's some more kits that eventually I will get to. You see I've got that 1350 Enterprise aircraft carrier kit too. That one's really daunting right now, especially after seeing the even larger scale one at the Smithsonian years ago. You see also 2 more Titanic kits because my son wants to have all 3 of the sister ships. The Titanic, the Olympic, and the Gigantic, which was renamed Britannic after the Titanic sank. And then the Britannic became a hospital ship during World War I and never really got to do what it was designed to do. So this is where I work, but it is hot as can be in here. So instead, I have moved a little work table into my bedroom, back into the house. Where the AC is, and it's so much nicer in here. And so here it is, another Polar Lights kit I'm going to do. Picked this one off of eBay about 2 weeks ago. It arrived about a week ago before I got back. So now I'm just busting into it and going to get going on it. Let me show you what I'm going to do with it again. I really have always favored the Franz Josef blueprints, and I much prefer the Starship design and the Franz Josef blueprints to the actual shooting model for some key things. So you notice up here the phaser banks, and then down here phaser banks, and up here photon torpedo launchers. Just like you see in the motion picture version. So I'm going to be incorporating those again. Some changes that I made with my Excalibur is that I drilled in a little floodlight here to broadcast down the length of the insignia. I also put one in right here to do the same thing, as well as up here coming off the front of the bridge, putting in a flood lamp extension that broadcasts very well down onto the insignia across the top of the saucer. Also, please note all these formation lights that go onto the top portion of the saucer, and that they have this little ring on them that is not part of the Polar Lights kit. So I will be using, as I did with my Excalibur build, some styrene tubing cut down to the same diameter as the LED lights I'll be using, and it really looks good on my Excalibur. And that's just a nice little additional bit that you can do. Another thing to notice here in the Joseph blueprints is this compartmentalization of the warp crystal areas here. I'm not really sure what to call that. Maybe the I don't even know what they call them anymore. But the thing that makes it look like it goes to warp. Now up on top, you see, that's where that navigation light's going to go. And then back here, the two strobes that I'll have there. Now one thing I'm contemplating is putting in a navigational strobe on the top of the turbo lift. I haven't done that before. I'm thinking about doing it, then I might not. Not really sure what I'll do there. Also notice here there's an extra 2 windows very, very low on the secondary hull. Those aren't in the mold at all, and so I'd have to put those in, and contemplating doing that as well. So let me show you some of the little tricks that I do for my modeling that saves a lot of time later, a lot of cleanup. So for doing those rings for the upper saucer for the navs and everything, just be using some styrene tubing. Now here you see I've got the saucers. I've cleaned all of the parts in the sink with dish soap. Get all the molding spray off of them that might still be on there, so there's no issues with spray painting. But notice that I've ringed both of them with my Tamiya tape so that after I spray for my light blocking inside, that will be nice and clean, so that I have a clean plastic to plastic surface for the top and the bottom, and I won't have to go through with any acetone or anything to try to clean those up. Let me show you something else that I do as part of this. Any of these inner parts, I'll glue those in on the clean plastic to plastic so that there's no compromising it with any paint. And also for the impulse engines, I cut out some sheet styrene, curve the edges, sand it down so it's a nice snug fit to help block the light out more, to direct it into the impulse engines. This is a neat little trick. It's very simple. It may take you a little bit to get the curvature just about right. You can see here that it's not perfect, but it's close enough that it's going to work. And I've done that in my last 4 builds, and it just really improves the dispersion of the light throughout the impulse engines. Now another thing that I do is I put a little ledge here, some sheet styrene pieces, so that I can put a little SMD up on top of that, so that the light on the side right there has a direct light to it, and it's not influenced by the nav light that goes underneath, as well as it will illuminate the light up on top. Okay, and that's a nice little feature to have there. Putting a little SMD right there makes it a lot brighter, and you don't get any bleed effect from your other lighting, especially if you're going to put colored LEDs into your port and starboard navigation lights. Now up front, I'm going to build, I've actually built it, I'm going to be putting in a little sheet styrene piece right there, and on the inside of it, okay, along this face back here, that's where I'll put my LED strip so that I can broadcast light directly into the 3 portals right there to make that nice and bright. Now I'm going to need to go around the edges here to the windows and fill in some of those, because on the Franz Joseph blueprints we don't have all of the windows that are on the model itself. So I'm going to fill in a lot of those. I'm going to put in these 2 down here on both sides. There's also what appear to be windows right here on the edge. So I'm going to put those in. I'm also going to have to scribe in the necklines because those are not part of the neck itself. You can see that when the model itself, so I'm going to have to scribe those in. And then back here at the hangar deck, you see a much smaller number of windows than what you have. There's also this little one right here that maybe with this build I'll use that as a flood to cast up light onto the nacelle support so that it has that look like in the motion picture being lit up. Still haven't decided yet. Now notice in the cutaway where the polar light stand tube goes is basically where the tractor beam extends out from. So obviously not going to be putting that in because I wouldn't have any space to do that. But also contemplating maybe putting in a formation light back here underneath the hangar deck. I may or may not do that. Still kind of playing around with all the different things I can do, modifying things in conjunction with the Franz Josef blueprints. Another little detail, notice that on the Franz Josef, the Starship name goes on the underside of the secondary hull. So I'm going to try to make that decal myself so I can make that happen. I didn't have a decal like that when I made my Constitution, which I still have on display at my local hobby shop, and they're still tickled to death to have that model in there. They say they're getting a lot of comments about it. So far nobody's offered to buy it or anything. I'm not really selling it, but it's nice to know that people are looking at it. Now notice here too, what I did with my last build on Excalibur is I put in a flood right up here that casts light across this on the underside of the primary hull on both sides. That really shows up well, and I really like that effect. So I'm probably going to do that again. Also, putting in the phasers down here as well. So a lot of little modifications to the Polar Lights mold, making use of the Franz Josef blueprints. And it makes for a nice little differentiation in the basic build itself. And like I said, it's wonderful to actually be able to do some of this here in the house where the AC works wonderfully. Now one more thing, you see I've got my little circle template here. What I do at the end of the nacelles is I'll cut out an oval. It's almost a perfect circle, it's just a little bit off. It'll fit into the end of the nacelles there, and I'll drill an off-center hole to line up with the center of the globe that goes on the end of the nacelle, and then I'll feed a 5mm not blinking, but the kind of oscillating white light, the 5mm oscillating white light, so that it gives the globe that kind of pulsating effect that we've seen in some of the remastered Trek and that some other builders have done in their own. I did that with my Excalibur and with my Constitution, and it just adds a wonderful little dimension to the model because you can really see the energy in that. It's reminiscent of the motion picture version of the pulsating effect in the engine room itself, with the warp plasma running through the conduit. That's just a quick intro here to some of the things that I do to put my kits together. This will be my 6th or 7th one now. Really enjoying this kit, and like you saw in the man cave, I've got a bunch of them. I don't know, this one This will probably be the Republic. I don't know when I'm going to get around to actually making the Enterprise again. It's kind of fun making the other iterations of this classic design. I did a pilot episode version here of the Enterprise, and I really kind of messed up with the weathering decals on this. You can kind of see the air bubbles in it because I forgot to lacquer it down first, and that was just stupidity on my part. I thought maybe the decals would go down a lot better than they did, and they didn't. But it's still a really fun, good build. And I'll be giving this one to a member of my family who's also a Trek fan and likes the pilot version. So if you haven't done one of these kits yet, highly recommend it. Lots of modifications you can make that are easy to do because of the scale. And I encourage you to look at the Franz Josef blueprints. You can look at all these online. You don't have to go buy the set at all. But kind of study this and decide to what extent you want to incorporate some of these wonderful little modifications that are in the blueprints that were not part of the actual shooting model. And you can see the clear transition from the TV version through these blueprints to the motion picture version, where all these little additions that Franz Josef put in become part of the motion picture model. So hopefully this helps you out. So don't forget to tape off the edges of these main parts so you don't have to do any acetone cleaning. That way you get a nice clean plastic to plastic joint for gluing. If you're going to make any of these little light modification things, get all those pieces made and glued in ahead of time, so again you can have that straight plastic to plastic so that the gluing will be solid. And this is just a really nice little trick, just doing that. I can't tell you how much that improves the lighting. So I will continue to make these videos as I proceed with this model and get them posted as soon as I can. Hope this helps. Bye.